This is a marketplace, a substantial building constructed by the Australian Army Engineers for the people of the village of Hua Long to the south of the task force base, astride the road running north from Vung Tau, Route 2. When we arrived in Vietnam, this was a very, very heavily enemy-held village, and there were many nasty incidents on the road where vehicles were ambushed, and a medical team consisting of a doctor and others was lured to the area, and an attempt made on their lives. And so winning the hearts and minds of the people was fairly much to the fore in the minds of the province, the Vietnamese province chief, and the Australian task force and the Australian Civil Affairs Unit. So this is the opening ceremony, where we've got the CO of 6RAR, Colonel C.M. Townsend, Colin Townsend, handing over the building to the province chief. And there's an Australian Guard of Honour and many onlookers from both the United States and the local Vietnamese provincial forces. This guy here is one of the, and these others, local village type security forces. And the province chief making a speech on the occasion. The building was a very, very substantial one, and would have improved the day-to-day lives of the villagers in terms of being able to sell their products and lay them out for display so they could be sold. And that looks like the local Boy Scouts group. It didn't look as if it was about to fall down. Various people wandering about, taking a look. It was always hard to tell who was who in South Vietnam. When you look at these local force soldiers, they look no different whatsoever to the Viet Cong. A French-built armoured car. And the local kids receiving some gifts. Poor little buggers. In the distance, there is an Australian Army Public Relations cine photographer. In those days, the Australian Army Public Relations people were taking all their film in black and white for some inexplicable reason. This is back in Nui Dat, and at Task Force headquarters, this is the 24-hour-a-day standby United States dust-off medical evacuation helicopter, dust-off being the code name for medical evacuation. And it was ready to take any casualties back to the big United States 36 evacuation hospital in Vung Tau, which had a vast array of facilities for operating and caring for patients. And here I am in an Iroquois helicopter going somewhere. Coming into land at Vung Tau. But here is Saigon. So maybe it was Saigon I was landing at. I came to Saigon at the request of, or the invitation of two Phantom pilots from the 5th United States Air Force. And while I was there, I took the opportunity to go and visit one of my company Vietnamese Army interpreters, Sergeant Coy, on the left there with his sister. Wandering about during the day in Saigon, I came across a lot of Vietnamese troops practicing for, I think, a National Day parade, which was to be on very shortly afterwards. And this goes on for a little bit. But going down to visit the interpreter, Sergeant Coy, and his family in the Chow Long district, I had his address written down on a piece of paper to give to a taxi driver who, when I gave it to him, warned me that it was a dangerous place to go for a round eye. And I told him that I felt quite safe and I wasn't armed, and I hoped that I'd be treated gently by the enemy if I was captured. So you'll see the photos shortly. This is a Catholic church in Saigon where I went to Mass on the Sunday with two United States Army officers with whom I was billeted in Saigon whilst I was visiting the headquarters of the 5th Air Force. There they are there. And they were involved in public relations, I think, but in their weekends they spent a lot of time helping the nuns who ran the orphanage associated with this church. And I think you'll see some of those shortly. In some ways, Saigon was such an ordinary place. The ordinary things of life going on right in the middle of a rather tragic war. Some of the children in the orphanage. God only knows what happened to these people. That's I think that's the Intercontinental Hotel. I'd been invited to the 5th Air Force because when I was on rest and recreational leave in Taiwan, I met up with the 2 American pilots, the captain and the navigator of a Phantom fighter bomber aircraft of the 5th Air Force. And they flew over the task force area one day, actually buzzing it. And if you've ever been buzzed by an aeroplane as big and as fast as a Phantom, you really know all about it. And anyway, they left a message with Task Force headquarters on behalf of the 5th Air Force asking me to come and visit. And so I was privileged to go and do that. But in the meantime, here I am at my Sergeant Coy's home, and that family had come from North Vietnam in the big movement south of Christians, or Catholics mainly, after the country had been divided. There was an assertion made later, but I don't know if it's true or not, that Sergeant Coy may have been not quite with the South and may have been passing information to people in the North, but I've got absolutely no proof of that. But they were living in a very nice house. After these pictures went home to Kingsgrove, there was great talk about knitting babies' clothes when the sister of Coy was seen in the pictures. This is in the streets of Saigon during some activity, the military police out, and that's the memorial to the South Vietnamese forces right in the centre of Saigon, and one of the things first to be torn down by the North Vietnamese after their successful invasion in 1975, which was 4 years after the United States forces and ours had withdrawn. The civilian police were called the White Mice because of their white and light grey uniforms. And that's a soldier of the Vietnamese army, military police. This military policeman seemed to manage to get himself into every shot that I took at this stage. Very attracted to the camera. A little while ago, we saw a United States Army band. So this may have been on the same day that we saw all those troops marching in practice for the parade. Another free world sign there. Local sailors. Aussie digger. United States Army band. Ubiquitous Renault taxis in blue and white. And the American bus. Bicycles, of course, by the thousand. and the fire brigade, just to add to the show. And a flyover of aircraft. If there was one thing there was plenty of in Vietnam, it was aircraft. And there's the star of the show with the headquarters of the free world behind, where the headquarters of the various armies that were in Vietnam were located. This looks like Ton Son Nhut International Airport in Saigon, which at that stage was the busiest airport in the world. All sorts of airplanes all taking off, mixed up together between fighters and jetliners. And returning to Nui Dat or Vung Tau in an RAAF Caribou aircraft with the rear door open for ventilation. During my visit to the 5th Air Force, when I arrived there and was introduced to the room, which was probably about as big as the Sydney Town Hall main theatre, the colonel introducing me made the quip that just because I had a crown on my shoulders, I wasn't a king, but I was a major. And I was also told that the two American pilots who I'd met in Taiwan were at that minute on a bombing mission over North Vietnam. And I was able to listen in to them, dodging rockets and doing a very dangerous job over North Vietnam. So I listened into all the operations going on. And then when they arrived back, which wasn't very long, in a Phantom going at close to 2,000 kilometres an hour, we all went out and had dinner. So it was a very joyous reunion with those guys. And I got to see the might of the 5th Air Force. So now we're back on the deck at Vung Tau, I suspect. There was an RAAF service by what was called Wallaby Airlines, which ran between Saigon, Vung Tau and Nui Dat daily. Now, here we've got back on operations again after a day or two of relief, for me anyway. Moving out on operations by armoured personnel carrier. And here is a look at some of our outer wire defences, which we've gradually been thickening up. And there's one of the best section commanders in the company, Corporal Gene, I can't think of his name now. Sergeant Crossingham in the middle there. And as Longtan was to prove, with something like 2,000 troops attacking D Company, you couldn't have too much wire between you and them. So every spare minute we got, we were thickening it up, which would at least slow them down, hopefully, especially as the wire would be laced with claymore mines. There's Sergeant Coy, the interpreter. Some of our Australian-built international trucks. The company getting ready to go on operations. The company second in command on the right, and the rear link signaller, Corporal Campbell, on the left. Saddling up. Others going by foot, if it's the same operation. It's hard to tell now. You notice the 1938 pattern webbing that we were still carrying. It took a long while for us to become kitted up with modern American webbing. And modern American weapons, for that matter. Second Lieutenant Andrews, Strzelikowski, Merv Hanley. These trucks had come up from Vung Tau, and one of the section commanders on the left, whose name escapes me. On the right, I think Private Solomon. "55 years after the event, my memory is just slightly blurred on all the details, I'm afraid. I have tried to look a lot of them up, but sometimes without result. Sergeant Godfrey with a patch over his eye, and Private Paddy Walker not going on the operation. Out now in the Badlands, an armoured personnel carrier mounted with twin 30mm cannons, the next one with, and these with 50 calibre machine guns.